First, I want to thank you all for being here. Such an important topic to talk about. And so we're really glad you could be here tonight. I see new faces out there, and to our Zoom friends at home. Thank you for joining us tonight. Just to introduce myself, I'm Stacy Nevins. I'm a part of the Wildcat Health and Mental Wellness Group. Try saying that really fast, right? Together with Joy Bach, who is on Zoom right now, Angela LaVista, we have Hideko Szymanski and Donna Griffin. We've all come together to help parents in our community kind of discuss issues and happenings at the high school that really center around our kids' mental health, because that's important, right? So anyway, so without further ado, tonight we partnered with Libertyville Connect. So we have Elizabeth McMillan in the back room. We have Rebecca Gables right here. Rebecca's going to share with us a little bit about what her organization does.
Thank you. The Libertyville Connect Coalition was founded in 2017 to combat the higher than average use of alcohol, marijuana, and vaping among the youth here. We partner with both Libertyville High School and Highland Middle School to put on informational presentations, and we collaborate with the high school Youth Connect Council to impact local policy regarding youth substance prevention. We all have worries about our kids. Are they going to be okay? Are they going to make good decisions? We want to help parents have these tough conversations with their kids about alcohol and drugs and support a healthy community that helps students make the best choices possible. In addition to our website, libertyvilleconnect.com, we're also on Facebook and Twitter, and where we post articles, tips, and information about upcoming events. Please reach out if you have any questions, and we welcome anyone who would like to join us. And we left resource guides over on the table for anyone who's interested. The guides cover strategies for talking to kids of various ages, warning signs that your kids may be experimenting with drugs, and various community resources are available to help. And there's also a summary of a great webinar by Operation Parent, 5 strategies to raise a drug-free kid. And if you're online, you'll be getting these tomorrow in the email.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so far everyone's hearing us okay, right? Good. We're going to try to project through our masks tonight so everyone can make sure they hear us. So thank you, Rebecca and Elizabeth. Tonight they found our speaker, Elizabeth Thielen, who will be with us later today or tonight. So as well joining us tonight, we have Sharon Stair, who is a former LHS mom, to share her very powerful story. And I believe Josh, her son, is on the team tonight as well. So we want to thank them for opening up their story and sharing their journey. In addition, we have Commander Dan Hill of Vernon Hills. I've known Dan for years, and I've watched him go through numerous roles on the force, and he knows it all. He knows it all. So I'm really anxious to dive in for some deep questions of what he's seeing in the community and our teens. So yeah, so tonight, let's go ahead. We're going to start with Sharon Stair's story. Oh, Dr. K.
I am monitoring the at-home folks, and they said that if the presenters speak just a little bit like slowly and good projection, it helps them with the at-home audio.
Okay, thank you. Dr. K, yep. So what we're going to do is I'm going to scoot over here so that way Sharon can lower her mask and you can definitely hear her better. Just so we follow the protocol. So thank you. All right, Sharon, go ahead and start.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharon Stair. Thank you for allowing me to share my story today. I don't necessarily feel qualified, nor am I an expert on this subject. I can only share my journey and what I've learned as a parent of a teenage addict. I thought I'd start with where we are today. Josh is 19. He graduated from Libertyville in 2020. Josh lives in this men's sober living home in another state. He is clean, he is sober, he is safe, and he lives with a group of Christian men, mostly twice his age, who are all on the same journey as Josh. Josh just got a job at Panera. He's enrolled in college and will hopefully start his first semester in January. And while this isn't the life that I'd hoped for Josh, I am beyond grateful for this. Never in a million years did I think I would ever be on this side of a podium discussing how drugs and alcohol changed the trajectory of my family. In all the chaos and pain and disappointment, I've been very blessed to have a loving mother and some very close friends who have been walking this journey with me for the last 3 years. Some of you are here tonight, and I'm very thankful for your friendship and support, which has given me the strength and courage to be able to share my story with you. I'm also grateful to Josh for being so humble as to allow me to share his story. High school can be a magical time for our students, especially when they are active in athletics, clubs, and student government. Josh was involved. He was a 3-sport athlete. He participated on the advisory board to the principal. He did reasonably well in school, and he had a lot of friends. If you had asked me at the start of Josh's junior year how things were going, I would have said, well. We were the house everyone congregated. We had strict rules and zero tolerance around drinking and smoking. When Josh had friends over, we had them leave their backpacks, their water bottles, and anything else in the foyer before they headed to the basement. We were being safe. If they wanted a drink or a snack, we provided everything. If someone was found to have brought nicotine or alcohol or pot into our home, we asked them to leave. Josh knew the rules, and for the most part, we thought he abided by them. Josh chose not to try out for basketball his junior year, and looking back, this was probably the beginning of a change in him. He was focused on lacrosse, and he knew he would play in college, so we let basketball go. Josh had been playing competitive basketball since 3rd grade, and he was a very good player, but still, we let this slide. Sometime during the 2nd semester of junior year, we noticed a change in Josh. His friend group was changing. Not to a bad group of friends. In fact, the group of friends were great guys from families we knew and loved, so the change didn't seem like a big deal. Then Josh stopped going to church and to youth group, 2 things he was very involved with and enjoyed. Youth group more than church, but he was a regular attender at church. Josh had a steady girlfriend who we really didn't know. She was quiet and she seemed nice. At the end of junior year, Josh was all state in lacrosse. He had a 30 on his ACT and had just gotten a scholarship to his dream school. The coach told Josh he was the #1 recruit for the lacrosse team that year. As parents, we thought, okay, not perfect, but okay. That summer, we caught Josh drinking alone, empty bottles in his bedroom and car, and at least 2 dozen empty liquid vape THC vapes stopped in a sock in the vent of his car. We had a problem. We got Josh into an IOP, an intensive outpatient program, right away. He went 3 times a week to a group. We restricted his driving privileges, his money, and his activities. This went on throughout the summer. The start of his senior year. Second week of Josh's senior year, it was Monday. I just had this gut feeling that something wasn't right. So I went to his car at the high school parking lot by the tennis courts where he always parked and found an empty water bottle. I took the last sip. It had been full of vodka. I would learn that Josh had drank an entire bottle of vodka in the parking lot before school, that he had to be helped to his first period class, and that he had vomited all over himself during 2nd period. This was the last day of normalcy of our family. Since then, Josh has been to inpatient and home, to a wilderness program in Utah and home, all during the 1st semester of his senior year. Josh came home 12/30 of 2019, in time for his 2nd semester of senior year and the legalization of marijuana in the state of Illinois. He was in drug and alcohol counseling after school and went to meetings 2 to 3 times per week. COVID-19 hit, and like all of our kids, they left on Friday the 13th, and for Josh and his fellow seniors, it would be the last day of high school. COVID didn't help our situation. We got Josh into an online therapy program, then to a new therapist, and we drug tested Josh a lot. He did okay that summer, not perfect, but good enough that we packed up the car and headed off to college. His dream school, lacrosse sticks, and swag in tow. We actually thought we dodged a bullet until we didn't. Josh tried to stay sober for sure, but he was at a very liberal college and they allowed drinking outside on campus. No restriction on age, but as long as you were in groups of 10 or less, it was okay. Not the ideal environment for your kid who struggles with substance. In the end, Josh left school and came home. This was early November 2020. Things didn't get better, and by January of 2021, Josh asked to go back to treatment. He has been in treatment ever since. Again, it hasn't been perfect, a slip here and there, but for today, Josh is safe and sober. What did I miss? The subtle change in a friend group, spending more time in his room, his irritability, his grades dropping a bit, his secrecy. Thinking I had 3 20s in my wallet when there were only 2. Everything is subtle, nothing glaring, but when we put it together and reflect, these are all the warning signs we have been taught by society to watch for, and we miss all of them. Just a note on underage drinking. We didn't condone this. We never let Josh even have a sip of alcohol. Our stance was the law is 21. We felt that allowing our kids to break the law in any circumstance was an invitation to break any law they saw fit. Here's the problem. We didn't allow drinking, but in other families, underage drinking was just a part of growing up. I'm not saying parents condone or encourage, but turning a blind eye might as well be the same thing. I know parents playing beer pong with their high school students in their basements, of parents locking the basement door so their students can't leave during the nights, parents buying the alcohol or allowing it to be bought in their homes for high school parties and gatherings. I am not here to judge or to shame or to do anything else, but I want you to consider my son, Joshua. He was at those houses. My son has a brain disease. He was born with a predisposition to be affected differently by drugs and alcohol. Those parents didn't know. I didn't know, and Joshua didn't know until it was too late. I'm not blaming anyone. Josh knew the rules, the law, and his parents' views on underage drinking and drugging, and he chose to break them. No one forced him. But had alcohol or drugs not been so easily available, might Josh have had more time to mature mentally and emotionally, where he might have made a different choice.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Well, thank you. So we put together questions together, Sharon and I, about to ask Josh. So bravely, Sharon went ahead and asked Josh these really tough questions that can help us, that can help the community understand their teenagers. And Josh, I know you're out there. Thank you for answering them. Your mom is going to relay them to us right now, but thank you, because every bit helps. And we're proud of you, and you keep going out there. So the question number 1, and you touched on this, was what are the signs parents can look for to determine there is a substance abuse problem?
So if it's okay, I'm just gonna read, I'm gonna just read what Josh wrote because he addresses them sort of in different order.
Sure.
Is that okay?
That's okay.
And so if you wanna read the questions, then I'll just read
Okay.
through.
I'm gonna go ahead and read all 5 questions. Is everyone hearing me okay over Zoom still? There's been no comments, everyone can hear. Okay, great. Number 2, the other question is, did you feel peer pressure to drink at first, and how did it begin? Number 3, how did you hide drinking from your parents? Number 4, what is the most important takeaway you've learned from your experience? And number 5, what advice would you give parents about underage drinking and substance abuse? So Sharon's gonna come back and read the answers that Josh has sent to her. Okay. Yep.
Josh has provided a glimpse into drinking and drugging from his perspective. And I'm gonna read this to you exactly the way he wrote it. Addiction is different for every single person, yet there are a few telltale signs. One of the largest is isolation. In a TED Talk with Johann Hari, he states beautifully, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And with all the people I have met along the journey, that saying rings true. Time and time again, I hear the words, I never felt it, I fit in, or I never had that one person who was always there for me. And for the record, when that is what we said as addicts, do not consider the unconditional love of our parents, family, or if mixed with depression, which more often times than not it is, our closest friends. Already feeling alone, it is easy to push oneself into a state where it is easier to give up trying to make those bonds. The truth of it is, we send ourselves into a mindset that often materializes in the same, well, alcohol or drugs will never leave me. But this is later in the progression. What to look for earlier is things such as looking for a reason to always be out of the house for as long as possible. Lack of return calls where they would rather text over a period of an hour or more. Visiting other towns often or driving to places they would usually not show interest in, as well as the interval of time they are gone. The way everyone starts to drink is the same. You're at a party or with a small group and it's offered to you. The idea of peer pressure is not as big as it seems, yet against all odds, it is still there. My first time at a party, I did not want to drink, so I said no. I had drunk before and I didn't like it. Over the multiple times of being asked led me to just do it. And the thing about that is, I did not see anything change on the outside. It was the same people offering me the same thing on the same day of the week. So I had to be an internal shift in myself, and that is where it all started to change myself. In my opinion, there is no hiding it. From the moment you step over the line of wanting to drink or drug to needing to, there will always be a piece of you that has changed. And it is only a matter of time before parents find out what has happened. Personally, I would stay away from my parents entirely to avoid even taking a risk. And if they found anything, I would have a long line of excuses or a way I could minimize how bad it truly was. The most important thing I've learned, and I'm still learning to this day, is that I must want it for myself, but also I must seek help as well. As I said earlier, the opposite of addiction is connection, yet the root of the problem is built in myself. Drinking and drugging is a solution to the me problem. If I don't solve, it will consume me entirely. The strongest advice I can give is to make a connection. Let's be honest, there will be a time alcohol or drugs are near or being done by your child. The best way you can prepare is to create a safe space for them to talk about it. No advice, no judgment, just listening and waiting for a chance to respond in a way you can create a connection that promotes transparency and eradicates the stigmatized fear of hiding what your child is doing. I am just so thankful for Josh's courage to share this with you today.
So much, Sharon and Sharon's family for being here and friends. I know it's helpful to have you here and sharing your story as you're not alone. So we really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Dan Hill, Commander Vernon Hills. We put together some questions to ask him. However you choose to answer him, he's ready, he's truthful. So first question that we want to know as parents that we have put out there are, how are teens getting alcohol and drugs?
Well, I think it always starts within the home. The alcohol and prescription drugs, at least. I don't expect you guys have marijuana over here. But that's where it starts. So you got to make sure that you have a good relationship with your kids, and that, because obviously if you have things in your home that they can take advantage of you, some kids will, and that's not something the police, we can't really get involved in that, because that's not something that's happening outside the home. We don't see it happening. Obviously, the more serious drugs, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, the same dealers are out there. And now that marijuana is legal, we're seeing a huge increase in its usage. But because the schools were on lockdowns for so long and the kids were at home, and due to the pandemic, I can honestly tell you that our police department has not nearly made the number of arrests that we had before for drugs. We have not seen some of it nearly as much as we have. And it's not because it's not out there. It's partially because people are becoming more private. We don't see huge underage drinking parties anymore where the kids are just putting a big flashing light over the house, come here, we're here. We just don't see that
Hey, Dan,
anymore. Yes,
just
ma'am.
speak a little bit slower and louder so they can hear you.
I think so.
Yeah, if Rebecca, yeah, are you okay if we shift over a little? I'll shift over a little, there we go. See, they gotta hear you, Dan.
Well, when I started, I said that, obviously alcohol and prescription drugs are oftentimes the kids get them from their home. So you gotta make sure that you have a relationship with your kid and you're paying attention to your kid. Just like you described nothing major, just a bunch of little things over time, like the frog boiling in the water. Eventually it just keeps getting warmer and warmer. And that's where I think the community and your friends, knowing who your kids' friends are, knowing their parents, your friends' parents might see something change in your son or your daughter before you do, because you see them every day. Just like your kid grows and grows, you don't notice it. You see them every day, but then you go to a family reunion a year later, and your relatives like, oh my gosh, what happened? And you don't even really notice it. So I would really encourage the parents to get to know your kids' friends and their parents, because again, if you might not see something, if one of your friend's parents sees your kid a month later, see something completely different. If you guys have a relationship with their parents, hopefully they reach out to you and let you know, hey, I noticed this. I'm not sure if you've noticed it, but this is something you might want to look into. So that's with really any drug or alcohol. But back to the main question was where they're getting it from. Again, they're getting it from home. It's extremely easy to get pretty good fake IDs on the internet nowadays. We've taken several of them. And stores, it's hard to fault some of the stores because of the quality of these IDs. I've seen them. So if the kids really want to get something, they're going to get it. And that's where it comes down to you guys being vigilant and paying attention, not only for your kids, but your kids' friends as well.
Absolutely. Okay, you touched on this briefly, but the pandemic, I think, threw us off a little bit because people are more homebound.
Exactly.
But with marijuana becoming legalized, do you see it out there a little bit more in younger kids? Or
honestly, the younger kids are vaping way more than we're seeing smoking just regular marijuana. Marijuana smoke, it's disgusting, it stinks. It's hard to hide it. But vaping is easy to get. It's easy to get THC vapes. It really is. And those, you can do those in your room and people have no idea what you're doing.
am I hearing that THC vape pens or cartridges are sold at gas stations now?
I don't believe that's true. I'll look into it for you, but
Oh, yes.
I don't
Thank
believe
you.
that that's the case. But I
Okay.
think that THC in of itself is still regulated and you can't, it's gotta be at the dispensary. I've never heard that before,
Okay.
but I'm not gonna say 100% that I'm right, but I'm pretty sure that that's not.
Okay. Okay. Because now these kids that walk in to get these vape pens, you have to be, was it 20 or 18 for the
Right.
vape pens, the regular ones, but they're getting
Well,
them.
Vernon Hills,
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought.
we
Right.
changed the ordinance in our village, so any tobacco products you have to purchase.
That's right.
We can't force that by issuing citations as to a 19-year-old who has it, because that's not fair. Because how does a 19-year-old from Buffalo Grove driving through Vernon, how do they know that you can't have it? So it only applies to businesses selling it.
Got it. Okay,
And yeah, so we've seen a huge increase, on traffic stops where we smell cannabis, all the time. And even though it's kind of legal, kind of not, if we smell it in the car, there is more than likely a violation going on, because if you're transporting it, it's got to be in a sealed container. And if it's not sealed from the store you bought it from, we shouldn't be able to smell it. So we still are dealing with a lot of that on traffic stops. And then obviously when we smell it, we investigate possible DUIs. We've had over the past year, I don't have the number, but we have had quite a few more cannabis DUIs than we have in the past.
oh, wow, okay. I was gonna ask you, so what do you do, say if it's a 16 or 17-year-old who you see that there's an open container, you see that they've been smoking, what's the consequence usually?
Well, it honestly depends on a lot of factors.
Okay.
Our police department is really trying to get away from formal consequences within the legal system for juveniles without first trying to notify parents, have parents come and then find out what the parents' relationship with the kid is. Because sometimes arresting a kid doesn't harm the good. But there are some kids that need to be arrested, trust me. And in those cases, we do what we have to do. But typically, in an ordinary case where we deal with a juvenile that's got cannabis, we'll notify the parents. We have what's called an M ticket now that we can write that kids aren't getting handcuffed, brought to the station. And we do this with adults now as well. It's partially because of the pandemic. We want to try to find ways of not bringing people to our police station if we can avoid it. And also it avoids potential for a fight with other people. We don't want to fight people. So if we're writing somebody a ticket saying, hey, this is a ticket, you pay the fine and you're done, as opposed to we're arresting you or handcuffing you in your car, which is more likely to instigate a possible fight. And that's something that we as police, contrary to some people think, we don't look forward to fighting with people. Nothing good happens. We get hurt, they get hurt, a lot more paperwork. It's not a good thing. So again, with kids, depends on the drug, obviously. With heroin, cocaine, it's a little bit different, but which we don't see very often with young kids. But vape pens, cannabis, alcohol. The first time we might write an M ticket, we might contact the parents and make sure the parents come in, and based on the parents' response, that'll help dictate whether we issue them a citation or we release them to the parents. And obviously, if they're a student in one of the local schools, we notify our SRO, and then our SRO in turn will notify the SRO of the school that they go to as well. I don't want not to punish, but just to make sure that the school's aware. And they may have code violation that they have to deal with, but a code violation at school, I think, has much more significance on most kids than us writing a ticket and making a report, because really not much happens in the juvenile court, even for violent, even for serious crimes.
Okay, the last question that parents out there had asked is, do you see teens mixing over-the-counter drugs? If so, what are they and what should parents look for? And that meaning, are they putting NyQuil with, say Dimetapp, or I don't know, like they're finding these creations to get high. Do you know what they are and what we should look for?
Well, the problem with those is that those situations, it's unlikely that we would catch them doing it. We might catch them after the fact, and if they don't tell us what they're high on, we'll never know. But I would say prescription drugs like Adderall, Xanax, that people are prescribed and choose to not take themselves because they choose to sell them to make money so they can get something else. that they can't legally get. I think those are the over-the-counter drugs that we see the kids using the most. But we're not, as far as the NyQuil, I honestly haven't experienced that. My guys haven't really
Okay.
experienced that.
Okay.
In our community, even if it's not with our younger kids, but with some of our younger adults, is Vernon Hills, Libertyville, an area of concern with opioids and some of, obviously, the opioid epidemic that's been ravishing our nation. Are we seeing uptrend, downtrend, or just general kind of assessment from you as an officer, what you see with that?
I haven't, well, I'll just preface this by saying, due to the pandemic and to the culture of policing needing to evaluate itself due to some of the recent events, a lot of departments in the area have become very less proactive. We're not out there doing as many stops as we used to do. We're waiting for something that really looks messed up to make it stop. We used to make 10, 15 stops a day. Now it's 2 or 3, and they're fishing with a harpoon, looking for something significant, as opposed to stopping every car with no front plate that they see. That's partially because of COVID. We were encouraging our guys to become less contacts is more safe for everybody involved. But also less contacts equals less likelihood of having a serious incident that might get misrepresented in the media and might cause significant problems for us. So based on that, we're not coming into contact with as many people. So obviously that's going to reduce the amount of arrests we make for the drugs. Now overdoses and stuff we still get called on. I think we're still seeing a very similar amount of overdoses, and typically the overdoses are they're heroin overdoses laced with fentanyl, almost exclusively. And I don't think I've seen a whole lot of that with high school age kids. It's more college age and up. I'm not saying that it's not occurring. And also, I know that the Naloxone that we all carry, that is used to counter a drug overdose for heroin. Those are private citizens can own that as well. So I'm sure that there have been some overdoses that we haven't been called to because they gave it to them and they wound up coming out of it and being just fine. But yeah, as far as a life and death, heroin is by far the worst around here. That is what is killing people by in and of itself. Now, I'm not saying the other drugs are not killing in other ways. They're definitely reducing the quality of life and having significant impacts, obviously. And I'm sorry,
No,
I mentioned it to you. I mentioned it to you beforehand. I talked with my SRO at Greenville High School, and I asked him, I gave him these questions, said, hey, so what are your thoughts on these? And he said, I'll be honest with you, what I deal with almost all day, and most of our administrators do it all day, is social media BS. And that's because the kids that were at home, the only way to reach out to their friends was via social media. And the things that they're doing, kids sending naked pictures of themselves just to each other and not recognizing how incredibly stupid that is, because that picture is forever and you have no idea who has it. Things like that, and just caring too much about social media is leading to a lot of the mental problems that we're having. And trust, that is one thing during the pandemic that we saw that increased the most was well-being checks on people that relatives are concerned about because they haven't talked to in a while. They've said strange things. They've done strange things on social media. We have committed more people to the hospital these last few years than the last 5 or 10 combined. I mean, it is. We're making sure we carry extra paperwork out in our squad every day because it's every night we're dealing with it. And with the kids, it's social media. I mean, the kids are on it. They really, again, they care too much about what people are posting about them. They're posting things they shouldn't be posting, sending pictures they shouldn't be sending. And it's just, that's what we're seeing. And then obviously when you get depression, anxiety because of that, the kids withdraw, and then that can lead, that is what leads to other issues like drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
So keep track of your kids when they're doing on social media. Don't just let them have carte blanche to whatever they want with their phones, whenever they want. I've got a freshman in soccer here, and we track them on their phones, so we know everywhere they go. We don't as much now. We used to have all the passwords to all their social media. We used to have their apps on our phones, so we could actually see what they were texting almost real time. Now, again, I don't want to toot my horn, but I've got my kids are they're great kids, and we've had no problems anything related to that at all. So we've kind of been lax a little bit on that. But like I said at the very beginning, it's up to you guys and to be aware of what your kids are doing and your kids' friends and know their parents, so you guys can have honest conversations when you see something that parents might not see. And again, it's because the police, you guys all know how major cities are having huge problems with staffing their police departments. That's real. And that's real in this area as well. We're having a very difficult time finding officers qualified officers that want to do the job. And if cities like Chicago, if their departments start failing, the problems that, not just violence, but all the problems are going to start spreading out here. And our departments, with our staffing issues, it's going to be very difficult for the police to take on all these responsibilities. We have enough going on as it is, and so it's just critical that you guys don't rely on the police to handle these problems. You guys have to be. You're the first line.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions for Dan, whether on Zoom or in the audience? I know Rebecca has a question, and then Dan's gonna head out. He's working, so he's actually on the clock, everybody. So thank you, Dan. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I'm not just wondering if you're like scrolling through your kid's phone, just checking in. Are there any code words you should be looking for if you suspect like the kid has a phone? They're obviously not gonna be like, hey, set me up with.
They might.
They might.
I mean, if they think their phone's private, they might just. That's again, I'm kind of the best one.
Okay.
But if you'd like, I can discuss that with some of the younger guys that are more in tune with that. But off the top of my head, I would think that you'll know when you see it. If you're going through your kid's phone and they're using code words, the context of the code words is probably going to give you a hint as to what they're talking about. You might not know exactly what, but it's something that they shouldn't be talking about.
Anybody else or anybody at home?
Yeah. I've got two graduates of Libertyville High School. I'm a 76th graduate of Libertyville High School. And I've learned a lot from,
I'm sure you know my family.
I probably do.
My children graduated around that time from Libertyville. Last thing else was me.
Really? Yeah. Check this out. But my daughters they're now both out of college, and so they open up the well, not that I didn't know when they were in high school, because I was smart and I did become friends with almost better friends with their friends than them. Sure, because I got more information and truth out of their friends because I was cool dad, not cool dad with drugs and alcohol. But I learned to like rap music and stay current on their events and open up conversation. In those conversations, I get the truth. It worked.
Yeah.
It was a home run.
And sometimes you got the friends are seeing the issues, but they're afraid to tell an adult. They're seeing a change in your kid. And if you have a relationship with them, they might come to you and tell you as well.
They do. And it was just something that, I did, my wife did, I did it, and I got some friends out of it. My daughter's friends are, we were friends. But now we talk about those high school discussions today with those kids, and I share with them the method of my madness, and but it works. It works. Just become friends with your kids' friends. But I'm just, before you leave, I just want to share. I always wanted to share this with somebody. The number one since '76, and all through my kids' high school, the number one place that they got alcohol was their own home. The number two, just write this down. Somebody's got to act on this. That Mundelein liquor store across from that bowling alley, they are live. You can be in there without your voice changed, and they are selling alcohol to every high school kid in our community. I promise.
Well, speaking to that, our department makes a priority of routinely checking on every store that sells alcohol in Vernon Hills. That's Mundelein. But I'm sure Mundelein is doing something similar. And I can reach out to, I can pass that information along to Mundelein. But what we do is we will send people that are under 21 into these stores and just see if they sell. And I can tell you that our stores, we very infrequently do we wind up making, I don't want to call it harassment, I handcuff, right? We're writing a ticket for they could lose their license at some point if it continues. But we do that as well as with the tobacco and vapes. We do both of that, and we're pretty consistent and serious in that kind of enforcement because that is something that we as the police have control over.
I mean, you would not believe how many times. Where did you guys get it? Where did and this is Mundelein, Carmel, Libertyville, Burnell. It's an open door there. It has been for many, many years.
I will pass that along to the right people.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for being here. We'll let them go to work. Okay,
Jim?
my friends in the room and friends at home, we now are going to introduce Elizabeth Thielen. She is the Senior Director at Nakasa Behavioral Center. She joins us here tonight to share her experience. Again, we're so lucky with tonight's panel. A lot of experts here in the room. So Elizabeth, go ahead and take over.
All right, so we do have so many different things going on technologically. I'm going to try to share the screen so that the people on Zoom can see this, and then I'm going to try to actually access this. And if I lose anything in the meantime, we'll have to just correct really quickly. So should I not share sound? I just don't want to. I'm not going to share sound. So with not sharing sound, and then I need to go over here and find my present button.
Do I need to move?
Can you just help me get the present button because it's off screen? So just while Eli is helping me with this, I'm Elizabeth Thielen with Nakasa Behavioral Health Services. I've been an addictions counselor for about 23 years. I've been with Nakasa 19 of those, and I've worked through a number of different programs, including working with adolescents and working with our halfway house people. That's it. As long as I can hit present, then we'll be good. Thank you. And then more recently, I oversee our gambling services. So I will be talking to you a little bit about that. And let's see if we can get this going. Now, hopefully somebody can let somebody know if the people on Zoom do not hear anymore. Okay.
Dr. K's right there. She can see. Dr. Nelson,
Where do you-
sorry, I don't know why.
Yeah, if I can grab the
Yeah, if you
mouse.
could just connect with people by chat and see if they can still hear me. And then I can remove this just if necessary once you're done with that. They said perfect, or no, that was you.
No, that was me.
Okay, well, I think hopefully somebody can alert
Yeah.
somebody in some way.
If anybody, okay, here's new messages.
Yes. We
They
can
can
hear.
hear. All
Okay,
right,
good.
good.
So we're
Thank
moving
you.
on. Okay. And now I need to click on this. There you go. You got it. All right. Thanks for bearing with us with all these technological issues. I'm going to take this off now just so you can hear me hopefully clearly. So I'm a parent. I work with parents all throughout my career, and we all have many concerns about substance use in our teens. Just by use in general is a concern just by virtue of their age. Misuse, we've talked about the prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, and disordered use, so substance use disorder, addiction. We all have these concerns. Now, if you haven't seen this, hopefully it's something you can get access to. The Illinois Youth Survey is generated from questions that school students do answer. These are the Lake County results. And Libertyville High School does participate in the Illinois Youth Survey. So it's really valuable because when you ask, like, what are kids doing? Like, let's ask the kids, and the kids will tell us because they can participate in that anonymously. But what you can see from this finding is that though we all have a lot of concerns about use, misuse, and addiction, a lot of students are not getting talked to by their parents about it. Okay, so you can see even, 30%, 43%, 50%, no, my parents have not talked to me about this, okay? And there's reasons for that. Parents sometimes feel disempowered to have these conversations, sometimes because of their own past use. Oh, I did it, so like I can't talk to them about it. Or their own current use, like I drink. I shouldn't talk to them about it, or they're gonna hold it against me. Or not being an expert on substances, or just being overwhelmed by all of the different things that we as parents have to attend to. Like, oh, here's another thing. I don't even know how I can manage all of this. But the good news is that parents have a ton of knowledge and experience to pass on to their kids. And this shouldn't be used against them, even though sometimes it is. Substances are different now than they were before. So even past use, it does not equate to what is kind of happening now and what's available now. And what we know now is different than before. We have a lot of research. We're actually collecting data from our own kids that we can use and be more informed. And then we have a lot of concepts that we can use to guide us in these discussions that are transferable to all the different things that we need to be concerned with our teens about. Okay, so this is just a hypothetical, but if, let's say, there's a parent who feels disempowered to talk to their kids about use because of their own past use or their own current use, or because, like, you don't know anything about this. Well, I have my own history and experiences, and these, along with what research tells us, our values as a family, what the laws are, and our hopes for you and your future all come together to form the expectations that I have for you as you face these difficult choices. Parents would hopefully use their own words and better words than I can come up with, but this is the concept that hopefully can guide some families. Just to give you a quick overview of substance use disorder, it's characterized by 2 or more of the following: increased tolerance, so needing more to get the same effect, having withdrawal when quitting or cutting back, not fulfilling major role obligations like having problems at school, having interpersonal problems due to use, having medical or mental health problems that are made worse or caused by the substance use, having strong cravings for the use, difficulty cutting back or quitting. I'm going to just touch something. Get my cursor back on there. Somehow I just lost mine. Whatever just happened.
Presentation, so I put the camera on.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, guys. Using more than intended, giving up important things due to use, and then using in situations where it's physically hazardous. We did hear the commander talk about driving under the influence, serious concern. DUI is one of the services that we provide, that I do provide in the work that I do. And we are seeing a lot of marijuana DUIs. We're seeing a lot of hazardous behaviors happening. But what are the signs? I'm going to list them, but guess what? You just heard them in such a more impactful way. So I'm going to fly through these, but changing in sleeping habits, changes in eating habits, depression, anxiety, irritability, mood swings, missing money, like I thought I had $60 and I actually have 40, so I must have been wrong. Changes in hygiene or self-care, delinquency, so having problems getting detention, getting caught shoplifting, having problems at school, whether it's missing school, grades going down, being sick a lot, like I need to stay home sick, or they actually look sick, because sometimes substances are going to have these, physical side effects, losing interest in things that were important to them, or friend groups that were important to them. And also all the stuff that comes along with drinking and with drug use, so whether it's the containers, whether it's some of the paraphernalia, and a lot of the paraphernalia is so hard to recognize. So I think the commander is probably a great resource to say, like, what are they, hiding them in, and what are some of the things that I can look out for at home, but that secrecy and that evasiveness. But the bottom line is to look for the change, because you all are the experts in your own children, and you are the ones to be able to recognize what's different in my son or daughter than usual. You know your teen best. So talking to teens about addiction, it's never too late to start. So if you feel like, gosh, it's, they're like a junior and I just haven't, it's not too late. Please start, but don't wait. Please don't wait, because the earlier the better. And then let them know that this is important, and it's going to be an ongoing conversation. And here's just one tip. I have some of the best conversations with my team in the car, and there's a reason for that. One, if we are kind of divided in our attention, we're less defensive. If I'm not looking you in the eyes, I'm less defensive, and I can just have more open conversation. So you can orchestrate that and make it seem like it's kind of just like a happy accident, but consider doing that when you're taking the dog out for a walk or drive into practice or something. Use I statements, because the word you is very kind of like accusatory. Acknowledge that we are all faced with difficult choices. Guess what? We all are now. We've seen changes in cannabis law that does create opportunities for people that they might not have otherwise been faced with. It might have been easier to go to a party and say, no thanks, I don't do that, when it's illegal, because you have like the best excuse ever, like, I don't want to get in trouble. So even adults are faced with difficult choices now. And focus on planning ahead on how they're expected to respond in these situations, but also the why. And then get their ideas too, because they have the best ideas. I think it was amazing that Josh shared with us all of his insight, and it's invaluable. It's better, than what I could come up with and what all you could come up with. So here's just some other information from the Illinois Youth Survey. I want to share with you that we have a lot of the prevalence of alcohol use. Let's say over 50% of 12th graders having used some substance. Okay, so you can spend more time with this when you guys want to look at your own report from the Libertyville High School, or just look at the Lake County results, which are available on the IYS website. But I show you this to say, despite those numbers, personally, teens disapprove of it. They think it's wrong. So this is actually an area for you to build on. They're worried about it, but they're doing it anyway. So we can help them to build on that part of themselves that thinks it's wrong and that they're worried about it, to maybe lower some of those numbers of them using, even because they're using in ways that are incompatible with their own values. So it's not just our values, it's their values. So just to try to make sure you can share some information with your teams, just what are the risk factors for developing addiction? We've talked about that family history of addictive disorders. Hey, what runs in our family? We're more likely to have a problem if we, bring this into our lives. We have to be more careful. Mental health concerns, they kind of go hand in hand, unfortunately, with substance use. Trauma. We know that there's a lot of trauma that can happen in our communities. And sometimes it's stuff that we don't even know about, but that history of trauma can really lead to substance use. And early onset of use. So this is for the message for all those parents who do feel it's safer for me to just let my kids do it at home. I'm going to be the cool dad that does give alcohol. It seems to make sense on the surface, but it doesn't. With what we know about brain development, the earlier that we expose young brains to substances, the more likely they will develop an addiction to that. So it makes sense to wait. Legal age of 21 should be 24, 25, if we're really just going based on brain science. We have to address the two big A's, which are accessibility and acceptability. These are the two things that contribute to use of substances. And we have a high degree of accessibility sometimes and a really high degree of acceptability right now with many substances, including cannabis. And then we have to watch out for difficult transition periods, moving from one school to another, a bad breakup, moving on to college. Those are all transition points that we might want to kind of add some additional controls and have those conversations more during those times. We want to make sure that they're aware of the consequences. Teens are not really driven so much by this, so we can express that these are our concerns for them and our job is to keep them safe. And so these are the reasons we've got these expectations, but they're important to know. Health problems can come from substance use, mental health concerns, injuries, assaults, sexual assaults while under the influence, communicable illnesses due to whether it's the method of that substance getting in the body or sexual activity that's occurring under the influence that was not planned or protected. And then an interruption of brain development and emotional development. I have met, unfortunately, many people who come into treatment and they're like in their mid-20s and they have kind of the emotional maturity of a 12 or 13-year-old because it's when they started using. I'm not going to play this video because we're not messing with the technology anymore. But I would recommend for more information to go to the National Institute on Drug Abuse website. It's nida.gov. It's a great site. There's good videos for parents. There's good stuff for teens on there. There's some concepts that do transfer to substance use conversations with your kids and just other things that we're worried about as parents. Address accessibility issues. So I have something to show you, but this is just an example. Have a way, whether it's a lockbox or something like this, to keep control of prescription medications and over-the-counter medications. Because when the question was asked to the commander, what are kids doing? Everything, anything that they can find, baby aspirin. I mean, I have heard it all, like whatever, thank you, whatever they can get their hands on. So really consider, how do I protect the things that are in our house? Because these young brains just kind of sometimes do some real boneheaded stuff. Let's try to keep it out of their hands. Set boundaries and expectations early and often. Attend to medical and mental health concerns because some teens do turn to use because they're struggling with something. They don't know how to cope with it, and this is the way they cope with it. I'm just floored and amazed, and not amazed because the schools are doing amazing right now, but look at this mindfulness workbook for anxiety. We've got to help our teens have healthier coping mechanisms, but please don't turn a blind eye or, oh, it's just teenage years, that's why they're acting like this. Get it checked out, check in with them, see how they're doing, but please be careful because unfortunately the medical community sometimes is very, very quick to prescribe medications that have addiction potential, whether it's Adderall, whether it's opioid pain medication because they're having a surgery. I had a piece of my arm taken out, a bone this big and put together with a plate and screws, and I had to argue with the doctor. I'm not taking Oxycontin, not happening. Well, you're really gonna, I'm not taking it, so can we negotiate down to some, Percocet? I mean, it is just, you have to be really, really careful. Do I need to take this? Does my son need to take this? How long will they be on it? How can I make sure that this isn't going to be problematic? What do I do when the pain diminishes? And really try to take care of that in a thoughtful way. Okay, cultivate emotional growth and resiliency. These are things that are going to help them in those tough situations when that peer pressure does come. And involve teens. You establish the what. You're the parent, you get to say, this is what I expect. But maybe enlist them in the how. Like, we need to keep you safe. We need to keep you safe from your own, young brain that might be impulsive. But how are we going to do that? And see if you can have some good negotiating that goes along with that conversation. Consider a message of delaying. We know just say no doesn't work. You could say not right now, and that's something that might be more palatable. I do want to say, be careful about implying that we do all need to drink, we do all need to use drugs at some point. That is not the message. The message is, if you decide to bring this into your life right now, you're more likely to have a lot of problems that may never go away and that you might be struggling with long term. Let's have you wait until your brain is more developed before you decide about bringing it into your life. So delay the decision, don't delay the inevitable, because it's not inevitable. A lot of people choose not to use for lots of different reasons. Sorry, I keep losing my cursor here. Okay, well, I lost that whole slide, but what's in your house? Think about what's in your house and how you can protect it. Can others access it? That means your teens, that means their friends, that means the guy that's coming in to replace a window, because this is how stuff finds its way onto the streets. Store and dispose of medication safely. I have a whole bunch of medication disposal kits here. Take them with you. I've got boxes of them at the office. So when you have a prescription, you had dental surgery or something like that, or you care for a loved one and they don't need it anymore. Putting it down the drain gets in our water supply. Leaving it in the cabinet gets it in the hands of teens. So please consider these safe. They're free, take them, just have some that you can get rid of stuff safely when it's no longer needed. That's a picture of it. So I know I flew through stuff and I hope we can have some questions and answers, but this is why I really wanted to talk to you, because you can see we got teens, they're smoking, they're drinking. What else are they doing? They're gambling. And we don't worry about this. So can we talk about gambling for a quick minute? It is the only non-substance addictive disorder that's recognized by the American Psychiatric Association. So right next to alcohol use disorder, cannabis use disorder, opioid use disorder, there's gambling disorder. It is something that has addiction potential, and we're not worried about it. We're not talking about it or thinking about it or trying to keep an eye on it with our kids, and we really do need to. It is, gambling disorder is higher among adolescents and young adults than even in the adult population, but none of us are worried about it. It even hurts non-gambling teens when you have adults in their lives that have gambling problems. And unfortunately, we talked about that accessibility and the acceptability. Those are very high with gambling as well. It's all around us. Any one of us on our phones could be gambling right now. And so unfortunately, if your kids are into gaming, which look, it is not, gaming, video gaming, and gambling are becoming somewhat indistinguishable. There's a lot of gambling features in video games, and the lines are really getting blurred. So we should be a little more aware and asking about it. Why? Why do we care? Higher rates of delinquency. Over half of problem gamblers commit crimes. Over half. And we're talking theft, retail theft, right up through. I had a presentation earlier today with a young man who went to Lake Forest High School. He was initiated to gambling at a very young age, as many of us are, just because we don't know any better as a society. He robbed a bank twice as a result of his gambling problem. He's in recovery, and he shares his story to try to tell people, like, don't, please do take this seriously. This can get really bad really fast. Yeah, I lost my here. Okay, sorry guys, I don't know what is happening with this. So we missed it. But what we do know is that we have higher rates of depression and higher rates of suicide among teens who have gambling problems. Teens already have a higher rate of suicidality. You add in gambling disorder. Gambling disordered people have the highest suicide attempt rate among any addiction. More than alcohol, more than opiates. You add being a teenager to that, we've got problems. So what are we going to look out? Some of the same stuff that we thought about with alcohol and drugs, but you can't see it, you can't smell it. So we really have to look for some more subtle things. Selling belongings, borrowing money for stuff. We're having extra money or stuff because sometimes they win. Unexplained debt. Having strangers calling or stopping by. Why? Because they are trying to collect on gambling debt. Absences from school, falling grades. They're up all night gambling, or they're trying to dodge their peers that they owe money to. They're tired all the time, up all night gambling. Withdrawing from peer group interests, visiting gambling sites. Overly invested in sports outcomes. So please be wary of sports wagering. It's newly regulated in Illinois. Easy for a parent to go, hey, the big game's coming up. Who should I put odds on? Do you want to, on my app, and I'll give you the winnings. This is something we don't want our kids to participate in. This is something to watch out for. Seems like they're using, but they're not. Like tested them, they're not using, but they're acting like they're using. It could be gambling. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. So what can we do? Please learn more about it. I'll talk about it anywhere. Discourage underage play. I have this logo here. This is a national campaign to start encouraging people to stop giving lottery tickets to kids at the holidays, at graduations, at birthdays. We didn't know any better, but now that we do, we can make a change here. I have up front for you, these are some gift giving guides that just say, instead of lottery tickets, here are some things that you could give to kids. I'm not going to play this video, but I do want to say positive peer pressure, whether it's for gambling, whether it's for substance use, is so important. I have an amazing group of teens that learn about teen gambling. And because I'm a middle-aged woman, no teen wants to listen to me about this, so I will talk to them. But other teens can make an impact and say, hey guys, we didn't know this, but we got to be really careful. This could hurt us in this way, and here's why we should choose not to gamble. So they're making materials to give to other teens. They're making videos. I've got these up on YouTube that explain some of the problems with teen gambling and why teens need to be careful, including if you are an athlete. I myself am a former athlete. That's why the injury. And I know that athletes have an increased risk for gambling disorder. And so if you have young athletes, we need to be careful about that. And there are strict NCAA rules against betting, and that includes on fantasy sports. And a lot of teens don't know that. They can lose their scholarships. They could lose their ability to play sports if they get involved in this. So please consider that positive peer pressure. Consider getting your kids involved in something like a teen court program. That was the other video I was going to show you. We have a teen court program, but there's lots of programs like that where you get the kids involved, have them exert positive peer pressure on each other, and that can help them to navigate these really difficult times, hopefully in a safer way. So that's what I got, and I apologize for all of the presentation.
Oh, thank you, Eli.
So
Okay.
are there
Yeah, I was gonna say, any questions for Elizabeth right now from our crowd or at home? Thank you, Brenda, for monitoring that to just see if any questions come through on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm not touching it anymore.
Oh, that's funny, yeah.
And it's a Mac, which
Do you want to go over by the camera?
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Come on over, Elizabeth. There we go. So one question I got from somebody, they texted it to me, thank you, was wondering more about fentanyl. Can you tell us a little bit more, like how are they getting that in the marijuana? What is the effects of this?
Okay, so that's one of the things that I should have said that we want to talk to teens about is you don't know what's in stuff. Because, I've had kids that thought they were smoking marijuana and there was cocaine in it. It was laced with cocaine. So fentanyl is something that can find its way into any number of things. It is something that is so extremely potent and dangerous. The officer did mention naloxone. I just want to say that naloxone is potentially life-saving. It should really be in any medicine cabinet. If there's any possibility that somebody could encounter opiates, whether they did it on purpose or they did it because the doctor told them to take it, your body doesn't care why you took something. You can have a fatal event. Naloxone is free. We will give it to you at NICASA. We'll give you training and we'll give it to you. We'll just send it home with you. You don't have to be a client, so don't hesitate to reach out for that. But fentanyl is something that often is added to lots of different substances, particularly opioids. And it's so potent. Unfortunately, somebody who's addicted to opioids would actually desire that. I know that sounds very sick. There are times where somebody has a fatal overdose and people flock to that dealer. And I know that sounds terrible, but they know that that's the real potent stuff. So there are fentanyl test strips that can be provided to people who think they might be, they might have something that could have it in it. Also, we can provide those for free if somebody is worried about encountering something that might have fentanyl in it. So just know that those are available.
Questions here or at home?
Yeah, there was something that came through that said,
Okay.
just can you talk a little bit more of the gaming versus gambling?
Yeah, so there are some components in now, and I'm not a gamer, and I have a 13-year-old, so I really need to get more well-versed, but there are things, for example, called loot boxes. And loot boxes are a component of a game that helps you advance in the game. And you can actually spend money on trying to get a loot box and you don't know what you're going to get. So that technically is gambling. The definition of gambling is, do I spend money or something of value on something that I don't know the outcome of in the hopes of getting more. And so it's technically gambling, and whether we want to argue over the definition or not, it exhibits gambling-like behaviors in the people who participate. Skins are another type of component of video games, and it's mostly for like, literally my stepson will sit there for 45 minutes and change the outfit on a guy. I mean, it's just like so bizarre to me, but they have value. They have monetary value to the tune of billions. There's something called skins betting. People will bet on skins. And believe me, teens are doing it. If that account that has the video game, if it's connected to a credit card, they can be gambling on it. So the important thing to know is that we need to have an eye on access to credit, what's going on, and see if we're seeing some gambling-like behaviors, like chasing losses. So did they lose something, and then there's like this burst of activity on the credit card because they're like, doubling down, and really try to intervene rather quickly, because with teens, and that's one of the slides that disappeared on me, they progress more quickly than an adult. So an adult could take years to develop a gambling addiction. A teen could take months. And so we do really need to kind of keep an eye on that really closely. And I will say, I already told you that gambling is the only non-substance addictive disorder recognized by the American Psychiatric Association, but the World Health Organization has recognized video gaming addiction. And it is in the International Classification of Disorders now. So thankfully, the way has been paved for people to be able to utilize insurance to address some of these, what we call process addictions.
Yeah, anybody else? What if kids say because I also meet kids like throughout the day, like on their phones, and they say, well, I'm not playing with real money.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm so glad you said that. So there's these things called social casinos. We have to be careful about them. They are web-based casinos. You might be doing slots, you might be doing poker, and they're not attached to money. Research proves that young people that start with social casinos move on to fantasy sports and sports wagering when they're of legal age. So there's a direct connection. We all hear the gateway concept, like marijuana's a gateway drug. Well, social casinos are a gateway to actual gambling in teens. So we do need to be concerned. Also, one of the things, just being a well-educated consumer, the payout rates on those games are different than the pay site. So if anybody plays them, they're like, if I had real money in this, I'd be rich. And they trick you. You go to the pay site, and all of a sudden, why am I not doing so? I was so good at this. I thought I was good at online poker. So there's a lot of stuff built in, and unfortunately, the industry is really trying to train young brains to be very, very stimulated by, getting coins and taking risk-taking behavior. So it really stinks, but we have to be really careful about it, checking out on the screen time that's being engaged on the devices, and really setting some healthy limits with that, and then encouraging some behaviors that are incompatible with it. Even if it costs you money, like they want to take up a sport, you're like, oh gosh, that costs so much for the gear. Well worth it. If they're not sitting there getting sucked into a device, it's definitely well worth it.
I have a question here. How can parents have the conversation with their kids to ask if they are taking drugs or drinking? What are some questions, approaches, and when is the best time to ask the kids?
So I think the best time to ask is right away. I really noticed something's going on different. Did you notice that? Have you noticed this? What do you think might be going on? What can account for that? To be honest, I'm worried about use right now. So I need to have this conversation with you. And one of the things that I meant to say and probably didn't was whatever plan you come up with, whatever expectations you set, you let it, and I think you did an amazing job of saying, this is what we expect, and this is how we're going to do it. Unfortunately, unknown variables, the other families that seemed like they were not going to supply did. So that's one that was unanticipated. But be clear about what's expected and what's going to happen if those expectations aren't met, and then follow through on that and adjust the plan and say, for now, we have to tighten this up because right now I have concerns. And so we've got to address these concerns. And when we get those addressed, we can revisit the plan, and we can loosen up some of those restrictions that we have.
Okay, I think that's everything. Wow, we did it on time. We did the 8 till 8:15. One other thing though, before we turn off, you guys, I know tonight was more about drugs and alcohol, and we were gonna highlight in the gambling a little bit, but Dr. Case saw that I brought this in, and this is an awesome workbook. I'm gonna hold it up for you guys so you can see. It's called the Anxiety and Worry Workbook. I have sat down and my kids, Jack, Hayden, and Ruby, be like, Mom, but I have sat down with them random times, different times too, not all at once, one child at a time, and just have gone through some of these, and they loved it. Because they take time to think things through for themselves and where they're at in life. So I'm just throwing it out. It's a great, fantastic book. You can get it on Amazon or I'm not sure about local bookstores because I do like to support our local businesses, but check it out. And that's it, you guys. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Elizabeth, Sharon, and Hannah. Thank you, guys. Oh yeah, absolutely. This is amazing. And this one. Absolutely. You will be so